There are currently 26 pizza kitchens operating right now with 3 guys in front of them making pizzas. When I think about that, it kind of makes me, I can sort of have a panic attack. But then, like...
You can't... When we do our annual budgets, we've just done our annual budget, and it's looking at the whole thing is terrifying.
Mad. But there's that moment when you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, the restaurants are closed.
But when do your restaurants close?
They currently mostly close at 11.
Okay.
11 p.m. is when the doors shut. No, sometimes 11 o'clock last orders.
But then there's close down and there's...
Do you know what's mad is there's been a call from some of the managers recently going like, can we open later?
Really? Why?
They're excited about, they want to hit sales numbers and they're like, we think there's an opportunity. Like, they feel in charge of their business, I think, which is a great sign, I think.
That's
like,
cool.
They're actually like excited about...
They're wanting to push.
They want to push the business and they're seeing an opportunity. I think they're just curious to see if it works, kind of thing.
That's really cool.
They'll probably do it and then kick themselves. Like, what the fuck did I say? Why would I stay open till 1 a.m?
And so you have a different manager for each restaurant, and they have that kind of feeling of responsibility.
No, that definitely paints a picture of like that we're running 20. Like there is definitely a system. They can't just come up with new menu items and stuff. But the kind of the chat is starting of like
the feedback.
What if we did do this? Which pizzerias could we do it in? How could we do it?
Cool.
Yeah, that stuff definitely moves slower as you get bigger, though.
Really?
Everyone seems to shit their pants about like innovation.
And are you wanting to speed that up, or you like?
No,
I'm
actually like I've totally realised. I've gone. No, you're absolutely right.
And I suppose stuff that was spoken about a year ago is now being implemented, so you can't.
Yeah.
Mess with that.
Yeah, it's been good for me. I've learned a lot about like. I'm definitely like instant gratification guy.
Well, we've just done we set up a new website 2 years ago, and we're constantly updating it and adding new. We're just, as I said before, the podcast. The whole idea of the podcast was a new creative idea that we thought we'd try.
Yeah.
And we're still small enough that we had the idea, and a month later we were like, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
But with our website, it takes time. Having scoping sessions and everyone getting their opinion and wanting to make sure that everyone internally, or a section of people internally, have had some involvement and say on it.
Yeah.
And, by the time that's released, we're thinking about a whole new website.
What's that? It's like painting the fourth bridge. By the time they finish painting the fourth bridge...
You're starting again on
It's the first day of, like, they've got to start again. So they have a full-time team who just do that. Go in cycles around.
Well, you must have the same thing.
Yeah. A lot of that. Anyway, we're just nattering. Are we...
We're kind of live and chatting.
But we're live and chatting?
Yeah, well, but we'll,
Oh, perfect. We'll do that thing in the beginning of a podcast where it's like, we're on.
We're on.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, what did I say? But yeah, I think what we spoke about before coming on here is how unbelievably different the products are that we sell.
Yep.
You sell, how many pizzas do you sell?
We do about 40 to 50,000 customers a week, which is like a football stadium.
Have you figured out what that is a year?
It's about Stamford Bridge. Oh, a year? No, I don't want to figure that out.
We both haven't got maths.
Yeah.
So Stamford Bridge every week?
Well, I don't know which stadium, but like for some reason in my head it's kind of become
that's
like
about
football
Stamford
stadium.
Bridge.
It's a lot of people.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And we do about 100 a year. No, we do. I think last year we did about one a working day. So about 270 transactions in a year.
Wow, that's a lot. One a day, one bell rung every day.
Yeah. Which actually I was like, that's quite cool.
Yeah.
And then comparing it to Stamford Bridge a week.
Can we just switch average spend for one day? Ours is about £14.50. What's the average spend at Russell's?
The average people are spending on buying a property is about £6 million.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's quite different.
Okay, yeah, we're doing different things, but
however,
it's also the same.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken a lot about this, and I think that I'm fascinated in how you have taken your one. Well, let's start from the beginning. Should we start from the beginning?
Let's start from the beginning.
So I remember when we were probably a year or two into leaving uni. I went to the same school and same uni.
Yep.
And we were sitting at a gig in Brixton, and it wasn't the best gig in the world. And we were all talking and complaining about what we were doing at work and the shock of leaving the joys of university and going to work. And I remember you were a runner.
I was working in TV production, making tea mostly.
Making tea. And I remember you saying, yeah, I think me and my brother are just going to go and I think we're just going to go to Italy for a month.
I'm so glad I made it sort of come off so breezy. Yeah, we're just going to go.
It was so breezy, so confident.
That was the culmination of about 5 years working in an industry that I really wanted to work in, but definitely didn't want me. I was like...
Really? Why didn't they want you?
I don't know. I'd done a music degree and I was like, right, I want to go and work in... Then I got a job working at Six Music, the radio station, which was like dream job for a while. And then they decided they were going to shut that down. So I kind of jumped ship and started working in music TV production.
Okay.
Which was really cool. It was amazing. We were like filming festivals and gigs and all that kind of stuff, award shows and stuff. But for some reason, I was really enthusiastic and I think, sort of got on with everyone in the industry, but never couldn't see how to get up the ranks at all. So I was a runner and then I was a researcher for like 5 years. For some reason, missed that bit of like how to climb a ladder. I don't think I ever really had much like experience of seeing people climbing ladders. All my family are sort of entrepreneurs of some sort, like started antique shops or pubs or something like that. So I suppose that wasn't really in my DNA. And so I was like, what do I really want to do? I really want to run a food business is what I want to do. And so I'd looked at starting a pub, and starting a pub was going to cost somewhere around 250 grand to 500 grand. It was just a big leap to suddenly have a big business. And then this amazing thing happened. Street food kind of landed in London. And so it would have been about 2010. And what became Meat Liquor, which was like this really cool, it's like a big burger chain now.
Yeah.
But they just bought, this guy called Yanni had put a 200-pound burger grill in the back of an ambulance, and he set up in a car park in Peckham, and he'd just tweet out where he was going to be.
Cool.
And I remember turning up to one of those, and like there were 300 people there. And I remember looking at it going like, I mean, that ambulance must have been 10 grand on eBay, and that burger grill was 200 quid, and there's 300 people here, and I started sort of doing the math, going like, this is amazing. So that street food movement was really, I think, really special and amazing. A lot of the people now who like run a lot of the restaurants in London all came from that street food movement. Yeah. Before that, the way that you got into restaurants is you start at the bottom, you worked your way up, then you'd sort of become a manager of a restaurant, and then from there you might take the leap of someone investing in you to sort of joint venture. Street food kind of broke the mold because me and Tom started Pizza Pilgrims on a credit card. We took out a credit card, bought the Ape for 5 grand. I pitched.
Explain what that is.
Sorry, yeah. So the Ape is like a little 3-wheeled Italian classic farming vehicle, tuk-tuk thing. Yeah, we'd seen that, and it was like, right, let's start a street food business. And Tom, who's my brother, who's my business partner, he's like the opposite version of me in some ways, because he's very sort of cerebral, very academic, very numbers based, and I'm sort of more on the creative side. And so we were in the Blues Bar on Charlotte Street, and I had this picture of a 3-wheeled tuk-tuk with a pizza oven in the back, and I was like, I'd drawn it, and I was like, I think this is a really good idea. And I remember he was in advertising and hated it, and he was about to do the fast track to become a doctor, which was really terrible because he's scared of blood. So I was like, and he was like, let me come and do that. And I'd never thought about us working together.
So that was just a chance.
And it was literally just a chance thing after he was like, oh, I'll come do that with you. And so we both quit our jobs, and we sort of started like sketching this idea of a street food business. And it was all kind of with the backdrop of like, do you remember that time, 2011 was like a few years after that financial crisis, and nobody had a job, prospects were bad.
Yeah.
So I think we hit on this like escapism moment of like 2 Muppets quit their job and buy a 3-wheeled tuk-tuk and drive through Italy to start a street food pizza business. The last thing I did before I left TV was I wrote a treatment just on Word, and was like, this is the outline of the idea, and sort of pitched it out to a whole bunch of different production companies. And amazingly, like it was literally just cold emails. He had 3 companies come back and saying, yeah, I actually really like this idea. Do you want to meet?
Cool.
And that was that first taste of like, ooh,
something
an idea that you've come up with that people like latch onto, and it's like, oh, this is really exciting. So then we went and met those 3 companies, One of them was like a big company. One of them was the company that did all the Jamie Oliver stuff.
Really?
And they were like, we love this, but we need to wait for a year to do it. And we were like, we can't wait. So we ended up going with a small indie, and we made this 6-part cooking series, essentially. The original idea was a pizza pilgrimage. We bought the ape in Sicily, and we drove all the way up Italy and back to London in this little tuk-tuk. We planned a week for the trip, and we planned the shoot we planned a week for. So we brought a crew with us, we shot the whole thing. And the first day we got in the ape, we realised that we'd planned the whole journey based on Google Maps driving speed. And the ape literally went 16 miles an hour top speed. And no one alive.
You weren't taking that on the motorway?
We packed for a week, and we got home 6 weeks later.
Really?
It was absolutely like, we almost ruined the production company because they were committed and it was happening. But so it was just all over the shop. But it was an amazing trip, and yeah, we drove up. We sort of drove up the West Coast and sort of found this Nduja, which is now one of our sort of core products, and then we landed in Napoli, and we'd never had a Neapolitan pizza before. And I think we'd kind of thought it's either going to be Neapolitan pizza or Roman pizza, the two most famous kinds of pizza. And we sat in this restaurant called Da Michele, which is like the OG pizzeria. And I remember having the first slice of like a wood-fired Neapolitan margherita pizza, and just having a sort of like the one lightning bolt moment. I was like, this is it. Because it's weird to think that, but Neapolitan pizza there wasn't really any Neapolitan pizza on the scene. I think there was one Franco Manca, but apart from that, it was quite a new thing. So we're like, shit, I think this is great.
This is the one.
If we bring this back to London, I think people are going to love it.
And was because you've always been obsessed with food, and you're a great cook. Yeah. Is your brother share all of that?
We both
we're on camera.
Pub. I think by his own volition, he'd say no. He's not a massive foodie, I wouldn't say necessarily. Like, I always give him shit because he goes for the ham and butter sandwich at Tesco's. You know, he likes. It's a man of simple pleasures when it comes to food. Tom's super bright.
Yeah.
So Tom's got very high IQ, and he's an amazing problem solver. And like his role now, as all the way through, essentially, he can turn his hand to anything. He can understand anything. You chuck property at him, and he'll understand all of the implications of lease law, and like he just gets his head around it in a way that it just makes my head spin. So I think he's enjoyed the process of building a business and a brand because it's just constant problem solving, creative problem solving. And
it's amazing how it's, by complete accident, you and him are in business together. Yeah. Well, not complete accident, and that you're both completely, sounds like so well suited, your skill sets.
Yeah, I have a sort of working theory on that. I feel like you might be able to shed some light because you also have brothers that you work with, or even just brothers in general, or siblings in general. I feel like when siblings grow up, they either grow up competing on everything, or they sort of diverge and go and do completely different stuff to not step on each other's toes, and they're getting attention from their parents or whoever in different ways. And I feel like me and Tom, naturally, Tom's much more academic, and I went the more creative route. And I feel like as a result of that upbringing,
we sort of left gaps for each other. You left spaces for each other.
Always left space for each other and never competed. And so as a result, we have two completely different skill sets that actually dovetail together quite nicely.
That. I think that's very similar to how a lot of partner married relationships are. I mean, for me and my wife, couldn't be more different. In the same way, like all of the spaces that I am lacking in, she fills. Yeah. And hopefully I fill some of the things that she hates doing. And it sounds like that's what you and Tom have, which is awesome.
A marriage.
You've got a marriage.
It is. It's totally a marriage. It's totally a marriage. And I think when people often say, like, how do you work with your brother?
Is that a question you get a lot?
Like, probably the most. Like,
it's my most common question.
I could never work with my... Yeah. And I reckon those people that ask that question often grow up competing with their siblings and have that kind of like rivalry thing. I always say, like, if we ever did screw each other over, like, Christmas would be really awkward. That's the kind of like my soundbite of why we'd never... But there is that, like, I try and put myself in the position of being in business with someone who's not your family, and there must be a slight nagging fear of like maybe
something's going on,
maybe something's not going to go right, or this is going to be a problem in the future.
We're now at the stage where I mean, there are 6 of us, so it adds a little bit of
That's a big crew.
different dynamic.
Yeah, that is a team.
And my dad started the business, so he's integral. And my mum has worked at the business for 10 years, not in it now, but the dynamics of us growing and the skill sets evolving and the business changing are definitely bringing up new questions. You can look at it in 2 ways. One is, it's like, if you're going to be the managing director of a business, you didn't go into it thinking that one of your things you'd have to do is be a sort of therapist for the family that are involved. And that is challenging sometimes. But I think it's a huge positive that when you leave home at 21, most people see their siblings and their parents a few times a year. Maybe they're lucky if they all spend Christmas together. Mm-hmm. And if you spend less time with each other and you have less riding on it, you have less incentive to resolve issues or to evolve relationships. And we are highly incentivized to make sure that and be proactive with our relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes loads of sense. Do you manufacture time outside of work because there was definitely a problem that we were having where like Tom had kids and it was like we spent 5 days together and we were not picking up the phone on Saturday morning. We're like, what are you doing? So we had to kind of look at that and kind of go, how are we going to like figure out
what you were doing? You were spending too much time together, or
we were spending so much time together at work that we weren't like,
you weren't spending time outside of work together.
And I was sort of not seeing Tom's kids and stuff, and it was like, we need to change something here.
Well, see that is I can sympathise with that, and that's constantly evolving. So I've got 3 kids, Jake's got 3 kids, the remaining 4 don't have any kids. Noah, who's the youngest and has been at Ross Simpson for the least amount of time, it was very much, he was a sibling, family member, and then he's joined and he's now in this weird matrix of sibling, shareholder, employee. You know, in theory, I'm his boss.
Yeah.
But we're also shareholders and we're brothers. And that dynamic is complicated. And we're also busy. And with 3 kids, you are so busy that, trying to manufacture that time is really difficult.
Yeah, I sort of said it like we'd fixed it. We haven't. I'm constantly.
If you've got any
I'm not seeing
magic bullets.
Tom's family enough. I don't know. It's constantly on your mind. But I don't know. That's part of the compromise you make. It is amazing spending so much time with your brother. Like, you sitting there in meetings going, it's so funny. People don't get this time of like working together.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And you know, and I think for us, I remember we had a dinner a few months back where Hermione was introducing us to her new boyfriend, and he was the only people at a table of 8 who didn't work at Russell Simpson.
That is nerve-wracking. Did he pass the test? You're on camera.
It's difficult enough meeting those. Like that meeting that group feels difficult enough anyway. But But it's very difficult for us to avoid talking about work because we love it. Mm-hmm. It's always the problem-solving part that you talk about, Tom, for me is just that I get so much joy out of all of that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us, you know, there's sort of an operational part that we all do, and then there's a creative problem-solving part. And the problem-solving creative part is the thing we talk about on the hour commute to work, the hour commute back from work.
Yeah.
You know, we go skiing together every other Christmas, and we get to the ski lift and we're like, can we see if we can drop anyone that isn't a Russell Simpson member? So we get 4 or 6 on the chairlift, and we're like, okay, now we can talk about this problem. But if a sister-in-law who's not in the family, not in the business, is on the chairlift, we talk about other stuff.
We totally have the same thing. We're like, there's a number in all of it. It's like, it's just 2 of you, like, we can chat.
Yes, we can chat about it.
Yeah. That's all very true.
Funny. So how completely different customer, completely different spend, but from what I love speaking to you about and hearing about from your experience, I mean, you've gone from 1 to 20.
We opened 20 in Edinburgh last week, so you're 26.
26 sites with a lot of people you work with.
About 600 of us.
About 600. So a lot of the feedback we've had, you know, when it was family, you know, you had a lot of control over everything, and we had a lot of feedback from people saying, don't grow too big and you're going to lose that by growing.
Yeah.
And when I go into a Pizza Pilgrims, you know, in Oxford or in London or in the enthusiasm that I get from the people there is really different from a lot of other restaurants.
That's good to hear.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know that you have an obsession over this.
We're big
service.
So we got back with that van, and then we set up as a street food van. And for 2 years, we were just working with friends and our friends who were like out of work actors. Anyone who was sort of bobbing around and wanted 50 quid cash to come and work on a market stall for a day could come down. And that was the beginning of like a culture of like, you'd finish work, everyone would go for a pint together. And the whole street food's very immediate. If the team are not having a good time and you're standing there in the queue waiting for a pizza,
the whole vibe is off.
The whole vibe is off. So like, it was always a fun time.
Yeah.
And I think that then morphed through to a restaurant, and we employed a team that weren't all our friends, but we employed a team, we stuck with that, like, let's go for creatives.
Yeah.
Like, definitely attitude first, and we'll teach them. I mean, we didn't know about restaurants either, so we're all together
figuring it out.
Not knowing how to run a restaurant. We talked a lot about like useful naivety, we called it, of like, what are the benefits to having no experience in restaurants?
Okay.
So let's just come at everything with fresh eyes and sort of
Love that.
first perspective on everything. So the first restaurant was complete chaos, like absolute chaos.
Where was the first restaurant?
On the corner of Dean Street,
Okay.
right opposite one of the first ever Pizza Expresses, which was always
Of course I remember that. Yeah.
David and Goliath thing. But we opened the restaurant, and like we were having a great time. There was a really lovely thing that came out of that street food movement of like the customer and the team member on the same level. There's no hierarchy, and I think restaurants before that had a bit more of that, like,
whatever customer says goes.
Yeah, and like you can't, the team members shouldn't be having a good time. They should be sort of serious and solemn and quiet.
But I suppose this was a big part of the street food movement. Like, it's just must have hugely impacted the whole industry.
Those markets, those night markets, was basically just a big festival, and everyone having a good time, and everyone was drinking on the job and eating each other's food, and you're doing like little collabs and sharing food around, and the customer was there having a good time as well. So I think naturally we kind of did that thing of like, let's just make a place that's really fun for people to work in, and then the customers will follow suit. That has now been sort of confirmed to us by, I think did I share it with you, Will Guardiera's book, Unreasonable Hospitality? So there are these two guys from the industry, Danny Meyer, who wrote Setting the Table, and then his protege is Will Guardiera, and he wrote this book called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Both epic.
Really amazing books that have kind of like massively relevant outside of just restaurants, but it talks about customer service and the culture of building a restaurant, and the whole thing is about happy team, happy customer. Like, if you treat your team well and they feel comfortable and they're having a good time, that just flows through to the customer, and you just don't have to worry about the customer. And happiness is a tricky word, because happiness can be sort of maniacal and like everyone's smiling. Like, happiness is about feeling satisfied at work, and not every day is going to be great. Service industry, hospitality is tough. You're working long hours, you're dealing with tricky customers, and like it takes some resilience. But the good side of it is what you're delivering to people is the best part of their day. Like,
that's true.
Like,
it's a little bit of joy at the end of the day.
Yeah, if we're serving 40,000 customers, there are 40,000 moments in a week to like, that moment when the pizza lands. It's like so like.
And were you on the ground doing all the waiting tables?
Yes, I was the head chef of the first restaurant, and Tom was the manager.
Were you?
Which was definitely also part of the kind of our mentality of like, we have to have done every job.
Yeah.
Like, we need to like done the hard yards. So we ran that restaurant for a year before we opened the second one, and really felt after a year that we kind of got our heads around it and how service works. And I think at that point you can look at anyone in the eye that you're employing and going, I've done that job, kind of thing. So I think that's a nice thing. All part of that kind of like flat structure.
Yeah.
And then we started. We opened a second restaurant, and that was a bigger restaurant, and it was on the other side of Soho, and it started to take some proper money. And then from there on, it started going, okay, well, this isn't just a hobby anymore. This feels like it might be something that we can work on. And we're obsessed with the product. Like, to be a single food restaurant is amazing, because you can just obsess about every single detail of a product. I feel like what happens to a lot of pizza brands is, as they grow, they try to appeal to a wider and wider audience, and then pastas go on the menu, and then they click on a little bit of the meat section.
You haven't done that? No
salads.
pastas or salads?
Like, obsessively, like, if anything, we're trying to make it shorter.
Really?
Because there are 15,000 restaurants in London or something, and like, this is how New York works. New York is like, you go there for bagels, you go there for meatballs, you go there for that. And
what was it like opening the second and third shops?
I think when we were up to the first 7 restaurants, let's say, we were one team.
Okay.
One group of people all just like having a crack, making it work. There was kind of nothing to lose because it was like we're just, it was just starting.
And how many people would have been? 100 people?
Well, I think the interesting thing, it was about 150.
Okay.
And they talk about this number 150 as a group of people.
Yeah,
Do you know
you've said this to me before.
There's something apparently in the human species that 150 people can be one community of people. And after that, you need to start splintering into different groups. So like the whole army apparently is structured on that 150 community number. And I feel like we did feel that when we started going past 150 people, we needed to start breaking things. We needed to completely restructure the way that the team was built.
You restructured a lot of stuff at that point, didn't you?
So then we kind of split into 2 things, and we had 2 operations managers running 2 different sets of the restaurants. And I'm sort of talking about this like there was loads of science to it. We just sort of like figure it out.
What did you take away from the Unreasonable Hospitality? I remember you said to me, never stifle a
generous thought.
Yeah,
like
I remember you said that.
We have this thing in the restaurants called super kind bombs, which is just trying to read the table and try and find that moment where you can just make someone's day better. So like.
And what's an example of that?
They can be. The interesting thing about them is they almost work better the smaller they are.
Okay.
So it's just like we do. Like they're called cacio e pepe balls. They're little deep fried cacio e pepe pasta deep fried balls. They're delicious. 3 in a portion. If a table of 4 orders a portion, just read the room and just put a 4th one in, and just let them know that's happened. That's like the smallest version of it. Up to like, we had someone who spilt wine on their shoes. So like one of the guys just ran out and got a new pair of shoes.
Really?
Like I think trying to create those moments, and there are obviously like Italian hospitality moments, like a round of limoncellos.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But it can be anything. Like,
and was that something that you started naturally doing, or people started bringing that in?
Started naturally, and I think just that Italian hospitality thing has got it in spades. But the cost is so minimal, really. And there's something about it not costing a lot of money. If you just gave someone a free bottle of wine, it doesn't feel as good to the customer as a small personal touch. It could be a written note. Like the guys write notes on the pizza boxes when they go out to Deliveroo, but they personalise them.
That's awesome.
And
they have fun with it.
That's the glorious virtuous cycle of it all, is it? Because it makes your job in hospitality better. If you're given permission to like sprinkle magic dust and sort of make someone's day, it gives your whole day a different motivation as opposed to just
love it
feeding people. I've been reading about this this thing called peak end rule. Do you know what that is?
No.
So the guy Rory Sutherland.
Yes.
He's the head of behavioural science for Ogilvy. He's gone really famous on TikTok recently. He's the guy in the braces.
I think I've listened to him on a
and he
podcast.
Talks a lot about psychology in experience, and he talks about this thing called the peak end rule, which is in an experience, a person will remember the most intense moment of the experience and the end of the experience.
Okay.
And so if you want to deliver great customer service, make sure you hit that perfect, most intense moment, which is probably the pizza landing.
Yeah.
And then at the end, there's got to be a little payoff, like something perfect just to...
So a little limoncello or a little note or a...
So we're currently working on how we can do that for 40,000 people a week, which is the numbers just instantly, like limoncello's off the cards. But on the point of limoncello, like if we can, so we're now putting in slushy machines, like ice slushies, which is like this really lovely nostalgic memory of childhood. But we're making limoncello slushy, which is like limoncello, but with lemon juice and sugar and water.
Wow.
And so we're now going to give little shots of limoncello slushy.
Nice.
Which will cost the business less than 5-10p a customer. But that little experience at the end.
Yeah, that will really make a difference. What are your favourite places? Do you eat a lot of pizza?
I do eat a lot of pizza.
do you avoid other pizza restaurants?
I was waiting. It's now been 13 years. I'm waiting for the day that I get sick of pizza. But no, I still eat a lot of pizza. I mean, the guys who always get name checked, but I still think are the best, is Dishoom. I think what Dishoom do in terms of the way they bring to life the celebrate, because they celebrate Bombay. and then the storytelling that they do, the breadth of the menu, the way they treat their teams, the culture, like it's a really complicated machine of what they built.
So you're doing one pizza and they're doing
this huge menu, and the teams are vast, and like, but yeah, I think
the restaurants are massive.
The restaurants are really big, but it's all done with like such grace. It's like it's all
and how are they doing that? Are just completely obsessed with the detail. How many restaurants do they have as well?
They've got 10 restaurants. I mean, the guys who run it, Shamal and Kavi, are very passionate. Shamal's big into the storytelling, so he'll sort of write, for every restaurant they design, he'll write a 10,000 word dissertation telling the story of the fictional character from 19th century Bombay, as it was then, that owns that restaurant.
Wow.
So it's like, and then that informs everything from menu items to how the restaurant's designed, to the paraphernalia, all the bric-a-brac that goes up in the restaurants.
Wow.
So it's really end-to-end storytelling stuff. It's kind of theatre meets restaurant, which is like mind-blowing. So we took them as a lot of inspiration. We're trying to do that on a £14 spend, like our own version of it. So our city is Napoli. And have you ever been to Napoli?
No, I haven't.
It is crazy.
You did a really cool. You went there not that long ago and filmed a sort of. Was there a festival there that you went to, or a food festival?
So I go a lot. I go like 4 or 5 times a year, meeting suppliers, and we do 3 manager trips a year to take them out there.
Okay.
So last time I went, I came back 2 weeks ago, and I tallied up. It was my 68th trip to Napoli.
Really?
I was like, okay, I've kind of been there a lot now. But that's an amazing thing for a brand to have a place, to, like an origins place to storytell from.
That's
so we're everything we do is about celebrating Napoli. So now the restaurants, they've kind of evolved over the years. They used to look like sort of street food burger shops, and over the years they've kind of evolved it to, the new mantra is it should be a 1-hour holiday to Napoli.
Fun.
So like when you walk in, it's cobbled floors, and it's like bare brick walls that we've kind of graffitied on, and we take old air conditioning units and plonk them on the walls with like loads of wires hanging out, and then washing lines with clothes. And so like,
great.
The whole thing's moved into a bit more of a sort of, it's meant to transport you to Napoli and be a bit of a sort of over the top experience.
That's so cool.
And that starts to inform.
Well, that makes your decisions easier.
It makes
in many ways.
We didn't have it for a long time. It like over the course of the 10 years, as we've kind of nailed down what the brand is, there are definitely restaurant companies that have that from day one. They have the Bible.
Yeah.
We sort of organically did it, and I'm kind of happy we did it that way because we tried on a few hats, and so we're really happy with where we've got to now. But that is pretty locked down now. What we're about.
Yeah.
We've done loads of work on our purpose and on our brand guidelines and on our tone of voice guidelines. That is so important. That's something that I think we've only really learned in the last 5 years.
Did you do that professionally? Did someone help you do that, or did you?
Yeah, we did. We've used loads of different facilitators to do it. Like we've tried doing it on our own, and actually, it is really helpful to have someone from outside helping lead that whole process. But yeah, now we have this kind of like blueprint. I think of it as like the spine, the backbone of it, and then every decision that comes off it, and it lets other people make decisions because they know
that's how we have to stick.
What that brand world is. Before that, it was just chaos, and it was just things were happening in silos, and now it feels like we're reaching this nice moment where everything's pulling in the same direction a bit more.
Love it.
Which is cool.
Makes me think a lot about ours. I suppose the family Chelsea thing. I need to work on that.
It's a really fun process to go through. And what's amazing is we finalised our purpose document. So our sort of strap line is making people happier one pizza at a time. And then that kind of goes off into a whole explanation. So we do this kind of 2-hour class with all team members, spend 2 hours learning about the purpose and why we're doing it. And, those moments of like making someone's day, and just like it helps to frame their work and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I've been really amazed. And, as we're employing younger and younger people, I always, they seem to get younger and I stay the same age, but it's the other way around. It's like, 18 to 24-year-olds now want to work for a business that understands its purpose, that cares about the planet. So we've just got B Corp status.
Great.
They're really engaged with all that stuff. So the new world of like being a good employer is making sure that your principles are in the right place. And
That's an exciting place, that.
yeah, it's good.
I remember one thing that was very creative, and what first went through your head when you heard the news and realised what the implications might be?
I remember we were just freaking out. No one knew what was going on. I remember we all watched the news conference together as a team as they announced furlough. And I remember I had people crying because she was just like, oh my God, all that weight of like all these people's lives and their jobs, and like, what are we going to do? Like, there's no answer here. And then suddenly when it was like, everyone's on furlough, it was amazing.
And you came up with an idea.
So yeah, then all the restaurants closed, and I remember cycling around sort of 28 days later style London with just checking all the restaurants that shut down. We took all the stock to the food bank and then locked all the doors, and it was like, well, what now? And then this was a good example of an idea that had gone really badly that you could use again. So in 2014, I'd come up with this idea of how nice it would be to be able to come into the pizzeria and take home the ingredients to make a pizza at home. So I designed this pizza box that had 8 little compartments that held 2 dough balls, 2 portions of tomato sauce, 2 portions of mozzarella, basil, parmesan, olive oil, and flour. And the idea is you could take that home, and using a frying pan, you could recreate a wood-fired pizza oven. So you put a frying pan on the heat at full temperature, you put your grill on at full temperature, and then you stretch the dough, lay it in the pan, build the pizza on top, and then once the crust is built on the bottom, you put it under the grill. And that is like the closest you can get to a proper Neapolitan pizza at home. Anyway, launched it, absolute no one understood it, no one got it, and so I was like, cool, shelved that idea. And then, but it was good because it meant when COVID hit, it was like, well, what do we do? So I remember took that idea, got that packaging, and I remember Googling like cold transportation. I think I was looking at like medical supplies that need to be sent through the post cold, and I found this company called Woolpack that make insulation packaging in wool, like sheep's wool, basically.
Wow.
So I remember having a really surreal meeting with the woman from Woolpack who only did medical supplies, being like, could you send pizza in a kit to lots of people, to lots of people? And she was like, yes. So then I remember we made a video about it and put it online and said, we're going to make 50 of these kits tomorrow. Does anybody want one? And we'll put it on at 12 o'clock. And then it was at that time when everyone was at home and everyone was just bored out of their minds or just had nothing to do. And so we put it online and they sold in 3 seconds, 50 kits in 3 seconds. And me and Tom were sitting together and we were like, okay, that feels...
Maybe we could do this.
And then we had to have a really honest conversation because we were like, okay, so we have the capacity to make 50 kits a day right now. Let's work on the principle that we could get 50% quicker every day, maybe for 2 weeks, and like maybe we get up to like 500 kits a day. Should we do 100 tomorrow and then sell 150 the next day and 150 the next day? Or should we let people buy one with the caveat that we will send it within the month?
Okay.
And we went for option B, and it's the day that we took the most money in our company ever, still is.
Really?
It just went woof, we just sold thousands of these kits.
Do you remember how many?
I can't remember. The numbers always fall out of my head, but it's definitely still thousands. The biggest sales day.
Wow.
And it saved the business, and it allowed us to take 40 people off furlough to come back into work to help like making these kits. And it just like, we managed to pay all of our suppliers on time, because we just had this absolute fluke of this day, that just the magic day when the pizza kits landed. And then we just went big on the kits, and everyone else, there was a lot of negativity in hospitality, like what are the government doing, all that kind of stuff. We decided to just make it a really positive space. And I was rating everyone's, we were doing a lot of live cook-alongs, and it was the time of bread making, so I did a lot of like...
I watched a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, a lot of like live how to make pizza dough stuff.
It was you and Jamie Oliver. Those are my two.
And yeah, we were rating everyone's, rate my pizza was a big thing, and we were doing like 10,000 kits a week out of it. And it was so nice, and it felt like a real community spirit thing. And we were sending a lot of kits to like, all these words I kind of forgot about, like people who are shielding.
Yeah.
every week we did this thing where if you had someone who was shielding, we would send you a kit, and we'd send the person who was shielding a kit, and we'd send you a Zoom link so that you could do a cooking class together. And it actually just turned into this really lovely sort of like thinking on your feet kind of problem solving thing. I don't know.
And bringing everyone together. I mean, it was fascinating. I mean, it's going to be fascinating telling our kids in the future about this. Well, hopefully it won't happen again. But it was extraordinary.
Yeah, it was such a weird time because it was kind of both really extreme and just watching Netflix.
A lot of TV.
Tiger King was the
Tiger King.
Watching Tiger King and eating pizza / it was really extreme. Yeah.
And has it continued? Or
so
that market
it has continued, and we flipped it into a subscription model. Tom got very excited about it being like the new Freddy's Flowers kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I remember meeting and learning about subscription. Well, like that's kind of his thing. He's like, right, I'm going to go and learn about e-commerce, just like completely in get involved in the world. So now it still operates, it's still running, going strong. You can either buy a kit as a one-off, but we have, I think, 350 subscribers who get a pizza every month.
Awesome. I need to make that 351.
And also it's just become this like, it's not really a business. It's definitely like a nice marketing brand tool thing. Yeah. So we just opened in Edinburgh, and so we sent 100 kits to 100 like mums, influencers, hairdressers, taxi drivers, all the people that do all the talking. Yeah. Like in new cities. So they all got a kit, and so the first wave of marketing in Edinburgh was 100 pizza kits landing in the thing. So we're finding like fun, creative ways of using it.
How's thinking about that, when you opened your restaurant in Chelsea, you very kindly came and dropped off some pizzas with our team.
Yeah. For our 10th birthday, it was a big one. So we're like, what are we going to do? So we designed the world's first pizza Vespa, because the first pizza van was a 3-wheel tuk-tuk made by Piaggio. So then we took a Vespa, and there are these amazing guys in Oxfordshire who make sidecars, and they've been making sidecars since 1920 or something. And they made the sidecar for Hagrid in Harry Potter.
Really?
And so I did a sketch and sent to them and said, could you make us a pizzeria on a Vespa? And it's the world's smallest pizzeria.
Awesome.
And it worked so much better than we thought it ever would. And we shipped it out to Napoli for our 10th birthday, and we spent 10 days driving around Napoli, finding 10 new dishes for a new menu launch. So it was kind of this sort of, and we were there the day that Napoli won the league, which was crazy.
That was the video I saw.
Yeah, 4 million people or something in the city. So we did a day, and we set up a stall. We set up like a lemonade stall with Amalfi lemons, because we did a collaboration beer with Camden called Amalfi Shandy that we took out there. And if you could do 5 keepy uppies with an Amalfi lemon, you got a free beer, and it was popular. We literally had like thousands of Neapolitans all hanging around. So yeah, that we've now used that Vespa as a sort of marketing thing for like. So we got an opera singer to come and dress up as a pizza chef for the day and like make pizzas outside the restaurant, and we were like driving up and down the King's Road in Chelsea with him singing O Solo Mio whilst giving out slices of pizza.
Brilliant.
We're never really short of ideas. I think what it does as we're getting bigger is it's a big flag waving, going like, this is still being run by people. This is not a corporate entity. This is not like a boardroom invention or like a chain in that respect. We're trying to sort of re-own the word chain of like...
And there is ambition to do it other places? Have data scientists tell you if other cultures and other
I mean, we're now in
cities
3 countries. We're an international entity, yeah. England, Wales, Scotland. We have on the wall in the office, we have the 3... You know, like bougie law firms have...
I have the different clocks.
Tokyo, Japan, like Tokyo, Paris, London. We've got Cardiff, London, Edinburgh. Brilliant. all done at the exact same time. I think our ambition grows with it as it grows. Yeah. Like that whole thing of like never reaching your goal is kind of always trying to achieve that goal, then sort of reset. I think we're becoming more ambitious of like, maybe we could be in a bunch of cities in the UK and like be more of a national presence. Yeah. Like, I suppose it's got to be someone at some point. So,
well, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
It's been a great time I've learned a lot actually. We meet and have some great dinners talking about all this stuff with a few friends. But actually, even today, I've learned so much more.
Oh, good. I feel like we just sort of started talking and with don't know where we went, but
yeah, there was no agenda, nothing. But thank you so much.
Pleasure.